Uh, Hello, good evening to all the participants. Welcome to the EV 101 Masterclass webinar series. My name is Naman. I am the co-founder of Mobilitics. We have a battery swapping platform for electric vehicles which enables fast charging and extend battery life for an EV. I am your host for today's session. This series is all about new industry which has new fundamentals and requires new skills. Through this series, we are trying to connect with young EV enthusiasts to get them ready for EV industry jobs. Before starting this session, let me tell you how participant can ask questions. Just to have you write a question, you should write in a question section and raise your hand in raise hand section. In Q&A segment, I will bring you up guys live to ask question one on one, or I will ask it for you. In today's session, we are here with Mr. Vivek Sharnappa. He is a co-founder and CEO of Buy My EV Technology. Buy My EV is an IoT-enabled cloud-connected electric vehicle for personalized mobility solution on a subscription model. Vivek, in his 2 decades of industrial experience, problem solving has been his passion. One such commute challenge to his work from home motivated largely in setting up a clean green tech in 2018 that resulted in PyMI technology. He is a doting father to a daughter and a son. He has no qualms in accepting that his spouse is the greatest critic as well as his greatest strength. Cycling interests him and he holds the record on completing cycle challenge like GMC, Spiti Valley and French Bevel tribes. Among friends, he known as someone who works hard and party harder. Hello, Vivek. Very good evening to you.
Hi, Naman. Thank you so much for the introduction and also a very warm welcome to all the participants.
So,
Um,
how are you doing, Vivek, in COVID? Like, how are you doing now?
lockdown for last 45 days and, we were not able to do any of the operations as such because of we can't step out and we were advising everybody not to step out. So the only thing that we were able to catch up during this time was we have done a lot of software related work, which was pending from a long time, when moving things from Advantage cloud servers to AWS and having the dashboard ready and also the mobile apps being tested out and all those things, so we carried them out. So I think we did a good usage of this lockdown, spending time with family at home, as well as getting connected with friends across the globe, still staying at home. So
Any, okay.
that's how it has been for me.
Any specific household skill enhancement, like for cooking or something?
Yes, I have learned a little bit of cooking now. I can, do some things when people are not around or my wife is not around. So I am also able to, help my spouse do the household chores and take care of the kids and keep them calm so that they're engaged and they're not getting aggravated. So that's how it has been.
Okay. Okay. And what about Buy My EV? How company is coping up with Corona?
So what we did is we have a small number of customers who are already subscribed for our EVs and they're using it. So we sent out advisories to them to not venture out and use the vehicles, and also like a couple of them were working as COVID warriors in Bangalore city, so they have used our EVs for helping the government in collecting a lot of information and data in a clean green mode, and which was a welcome thing from the government as well. And apart from that, all the deployments have been stalled right now because of the pandemic, and people don't want to step out, and we are also following the guidelines of the government not to step out. But once the lockdown is going to ease next week onwards, I think we'll be getting very busy in giving the tryouts for people who don't want to use the shared mobility or the cabs for their short distance commutes.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so Vivek, let's start this webinar. We can You can start your presentation on personal mobility solution, which includes future of electric vehicle design, electric vehicle motor, IoT, micro mobility future, and about my EV. So over to you, Vivek. You
Yeah,
can screen share.
yeah.
Yes. No, Vivek. Yeah.
So just let me know if you're able to see the slides
Yes,
now.
perfectly.
Okay, okay. Thanks for the opportunity to be a speaker on this platform, and a warm welcome to all the participants. I know most of them are from the engineering background, so I'll keep it more interactive so that you understand how the mobility solutions work and what we do at Buy My EV. So this is how the agenda looks for today. I'll be talking on future of vehicle design in e-mobility, on EV motors and regen braking. On the battery technology, I might not talk more, but since it comes under the EV, so I had to make that entry point. So I'll just touch base on that, and we will be talking something interesting and which is new, which is V2G and V2V. V2G is vehicle to grid, and V2 is vehicle to vehicle charging and communication solutions. And next, we'll be talking on IoT and micro mobility. And in the last bit, we'll be talking on upskilling of what disciplines of engineering can concentrate on where, and how they need to upskill if they want to move to different domains within the EV design and development. And finally, we'll also be taking up the Q&A. So when we talk about a design, there are few things which we all need to consider and have that in our mind. So first thing is, like, what segment are we targeting? Or do I want to design for a two-wheeler or a three-wheeler or a four-wheeler or a heavy vehicle? And once we decide on the segment, then you can move to the next thing, that will be the battery chemistry or the capacity and the voltage that you want to do it. And once you do, the next thing that you need to concentrate will be on the motor type. In motor type, like, whether you want it to be a long range vehicle or a powerful short distance vehicle, and how much the torque needs to be there, and what will be the max power that the vehicle can output, based on the the target of the vehicle, in which industry you're planning to deploy it, whether it is the consumers or it is into the industrial areas, or it is for the business to business, for the logistics, or it can be anything. So when you decide on all these factors, that helps you out in doing your design. And also the top speed is one thing which you need to consider, because generally, in my experience, what I've seen is, like, people ask me, like, what is the top speed that it does. So if you have seen, there are a lot of low speed vehicles available in the market which does a top of 25 kilometers per hour. So people generally will not be happy with that. So you also need to consider, like, okay, what is the top speed that my vehicle can achieve in the given boundaries that you would have drawn with your battery capacity and range, and what kind of motor you are using. And range is something which is a very tricky one to be solved. For example, if you're considering a two-wheeler, I cannot give a 300-mile range in a two-wheeler. It's very difficult in the currently available market available battery chemistries if you use, which is like lithium ion and lithium polymer. It's very difficult to achieve that in a two-wheeler. And in a four-wheeler, yes, we can do that, but in a four-wheeler, we cannot achieve 1,000-mile range. So we need to consider that, and based on that, we need to keep that in mind when we do the design. I cannot have a heavy battery pack lying on the bike in case of a two-wheeler, which is going to be practically impossible to ride around. And also the charging of the batteries. So now, if you see in the Indian market, the two-wheeler segment is the largest, and yeah, it's very cumbersome for somebody to go and put it for a DC-DC fast charge, or AC charging, or charge put it on a charge and leave the vehicle. It's very annoying for the consumer market, because everybody is used to the fuel, very like, when you go to a fuel station, it just takes few minutes for them to refuel and keep going. So this is another thing which we need to keep in mind, whether like my vehicle will have if it is a two-wheeler segment, whether it will have a swap battery, and if it is a three-wheeler, again, like swap is possible there. In four-wheelers, it's very difficult to have a swap battery, but we can always have the DC-DC fast charging, which will bring up your charge time like for 50-60% in less than 10-15 minutes. So all those things are the basic criteria which you need to consider when you start designing of your vehicle. And finally, the high performance vehicles, if you are planning to do it, never do it by using a platform which is already available. For example, I'll say Mahindra e-Verito, which is there, it is not a native platform. It was a IC engine vehicle in which they have just removed the engine, and they have just put it with the motor and batteries, and they are trying to run the vehicle. So what happens is, like in this, like if you want to achieve high performance, right, it's very, very difficult. You'll have to do a lot of iterations and a lot of design changes, which will be frustrating, and also like you might not achieve the targets that you want to do it. Whereas if you do it from scratch, for example, the same Mahindra example, I'll take it. If you see, Revo was like a native platform design, wherein they used a three-phase motor and they designed it, and they were able to do 80-100 in that small cute little car. So I would say, like if you are planning to do a design of high performance vehicles, be it two-wheeler or four-wheeler or three-wheeler, I would say, like don't use any of the existing platforms or vehicles. You start from the scratch. You start the design by understanding like what exactly are the criteria that you want to do it with the high performance. Based on that, you start your design, and don't use any available platform to design that. So that's one of the thing which you can even notice in the car industry. Also, like as an example, Tesla is like a native platform. They started from scratch. And the Nissan Leaf, which is already in the automotive industry, the Nissan Leaf was a completely new platform, which was a native for electric vehicle. So if you when you get time, if you go through these statistics and data available for these vehicles, right, you can see that they're really high performance vehicles, wherein like their native platforms really help them to achieve what exactly was what the designer thought when he started off. Like, I want a vehicle which will do a range of 100-150 miles, and they were also able to extend it up to 200-300 miles in one full charge. So these are the things that should be on your top of the mind when you are going to sit down in the drawing room to start designing your the vehicle. Be it like you do your own startup, or you join a company for work or anything. So these parameters should always be in your background, thinking that okay, these are all the things that I need to consider when I am going to do the design of my EV. So that's much on the design part. So next we will be moving on to the very interesting thing that is on the EV motors. So here, like I've put it as two-wheeler, but also like I'll quote examples of what motors the four-wheelers are using, and I think I've also put them in the note section, wherein like you can refer to them at a later stage. So in EV motors, right, generally we can categorize them into three categories, I would say. One is the brushless DC motor, which is widely used in the two-wheeler segment, BLDC. The next one is the permanent magnet synchronous motor, PMSM. This is again used in high performance vehicles in two-wheeler segment, and also to some extent, I think four-wheelers also use them. Like for example, Toyota Prius, which is a hybrid, uses these kind of motors. And you have the three-phase induction motor, which is basically your Tesla design runs on these kind of motors, and even your Reva, which was done in India, in Bangalore, was still uses a three-phase induction motor. The last one is the switched reluctant motor, which is called as SRM. These are currently not in the market or not widely used, as far as I know, because of the technical difficulties in designing a controller for these motors. See, any of these motors, when you have to use them, right, you need to have an equivalent uh, controller designed for it, which works in sync with these motors. So when I say, like, I'm going to do a BLDC motor, I also need to design a controller which works in line with whatever the BLDC motor that I'm going to design it. So in the market, like, you can see, like, many of the controllers are available, which you can get started to get an understanding of it. But in the long run, if you want to get a very good performance output, or the range, or the torque, or any of the parameters, right, then you need to have your own controller designed so that you can achieve those parameters. And it holds good for even for the PMSM thing. So if you see the large big houses which are into electric vehicles, they have their own controllers designed for these motors. For example, in two-wheeler segment, like even By My EV has, we have our own controller being designed for the the motor that we use, which is the BLDC motor. Ather has got their own both the PMSM and BLDC motors have their own controllers designed, and Tesla and Reva have their own controllers which works for the three-phase induction motors. So now, just getting into the details of these, you can see, like, I've just highlighted, like, what exactly is a BLDC motor and what kind of BLDC motors are available. So in BLDC, again, we have in-runner and out-runner types, wherein out-runner is something which generally you can see as a hub motor, which is widely available in the Indian market in the two-wheeler segment. And in-runner is something like, the 450 Ather, which has got a belt drive attached to the wheel, so that it has a better performance and better torque and available in the in-runner type. So in BLDC, what happens is, when you use an outrunner, the efficiency is very, very high. Your initial torque is very high. So just as an example, I can say, like, when you do a start line to go, right, I think the BLDC motors can give you a very good torque in the initial, wherein, like, you can quickly achieve the the top speeds. But once they reach the top speed, they cannot go beyond that in the BLDC motors. So in the outrunner types, you can see, like, NDS Eco Motors and Tronx, which is another startup, and even your bicycles, which are, like, electric assisted. They all use the outrunner type of BLDC motors, which sit on the back wheel hub. So they sit along with the wheel, so they're called as hub motors. And even we use a hub motor in our electric vehicles. And in the in-runner type, like, you can see, like, they go outside, and you have a belt drive mechanism which will drive these motors. So one of the example is Ather Energy has a coated, and also Kinetic Green has this, and Spigo Vehicles uses this, and Volta Automotive also uses these kind of motors. Volta Automotive is basically into a three-wheeler segment where they do a retrofitting for the existing auto rickshaws in Bangalore. So we are moving to the next one, which is called as the permanent magnet synchronous motors. So these, as I said, the new Ather, which has come out in the market, 450X, uses these kind of motors. And your Nissan Leaf or Chevy or BMW, all these guys who have either hybrid or, like, even the non-hybrid ones, they use the PSSM motor for propulsion. So the only difference is, like, these are little expensive. So you cannot think of putting a PMSM on a two-wheeler. For example, like, Ather Energy just put it in a two-wheeler, so their costs have gone high. So your Ather Energy 450AX is very expensive for a two-wheeler pricing if you see the two-wheeler market as such. But when it goes into a four-wheeler, it makes sense because of the battery capacity that comes in there, and a lot of other factors which help you in high performance, which can be achieved in the PMSM motors. So that's the reason why these guys don't use BLDC motors here, because that's not going to fit into these segments. So you can never see a BLDC motor being used in a four-wheeler cars anywhere in the world. So the very interesting.
Excuse me, Vivek. There's one question regarding came from in the question. There's Akib is saying, are these BLDC or PSM motors are being manufactured in India?
Yes, we are in. I have one slide wherein, like, I can tell, like, who is associated with us in
Okay.
what manufacturing. So
Hmm.
there is a Bangalore-based startup called as Physics Motors, which is based out of Bangalore. So we are working with them in manufacturing these BLDC hub motors in Bangalore. And
Okay.
also, there are a couple of other companies which are actually manufacturing these motors in Bangalore. So now there are two things here, right? So when we talk of the BLDC motors, like inside the BLDC motors, we have the magnets which are placed, based on, like, how what is the torque we want to achieve, or what is the capacity of the motor, whether it is a 1500-watt motor or 2000-watt motor, or 250-watt motor for bicycle. So now there is a we use magnets inside those to be done. So those magnets are not currently manufactured in India. These are coming from either China or from Germany or from Europe. You need to get them because these powerful magnets are currently not being yet manufactured in India. But I hope things change down the lane, where, like, everything gets localized to India. Hope that answers the
Yes.
question. Okay. So moving to the three-phase induction motor, I think somebody who's from a electrical background can know, like, these have been there from ages, and even like our uncles and dads who have studied about these induction motors. These are a very efficient, very improvised, which have reached this state where, like, they have been tried, tested in the field for many years. So these are, like, very optimal to use it, and you can see the efficiency of these is, like, 92 to 95% of the efficiency, wherein, like, it's very difficult to achieve that efficiency in any other kind of motors currently available. So for that reason, like, even if you see the graph on the right hand side in the slide, the torque and speed, like, they go very well in synchronous. Like, as you accelerate, you catch up with your speed, and as you remove the pedal, the speed is going to reduce. So the torque and speed work in synchronous and are very efficiently can be efficiently programmed in your controller for a three-phase induction motor. But unfortunately, these are not suitable for two-wheelers. So you can see mostly Tesla uses this one, and Reva uses this, and I think many other four-wheeler car manufacturers in the EV segment are using the either PSSM or the three-phase induction motors. So that's on the three-phase induction motor. The last one in the types of motors that mostly we see is okay. I have another thing. Wherein, like, I've just told the same thing. TVS Motors and Tesla and Reva and other people are using these because of the efficiency, and they've been there for ages, tried and tested, and it gives you the required torque when you actually accelerate. I think Tata Nexon is based on the same platform. So switched reluctance motors is something probably very rarely you would have heard about it, because not many people have talk about it because of the it's a very simple in construction, but people had issues in writing a controller which will work in synchronous with this, and even the cost, since these are not in the mainstream market, the cost will be very high. And other thing what people also figure out is, like, commercial market, if things are not there, then it's going to be very expensive for somebody to try this out. So if it enter the commercial market, the prediction that the industry is doing it is it might replace your PM SM and induction motors in the future, if this catches up with the EV industry. So that's how the motor looks to see. And again, these are all not feasible for a two-wheeler or a three-wheeler segment. It's mainly for the four-wheelers and heavy vehicles which can be designed and incorporated. So, Naman, can we move to the next one, or is there any question
Yes.
you need to take?
Yeah, we can take questions in last. Let's
Okay,
just finish the people.
okay.
We are also having little less time for the people.
Okay.
So
So,
we can,
sure. Thank you. So the next thing, which I think everybody would have heard about it, like when if you have tried a EV test drive of a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler, people would have talked about, sir, this has got a regenerative braking system, which you would have not heard in the ICE engines till date, right? Like so many bikes, so many vehicles, we never experienced it. So what exactly happens is when any, I mean, it's a physics basically. With any vehicle, you apply your brake, right, which generates some kinetic energy, and in the ICE engines, there is no way you can capture it and reuse because you cannot convert that kinetic energy into fuel energy, which can be put back into the vehicle. So what happens is it is dissipated as heat, and it's destroyed, and it's lost. So whereas in the EVs, there is a mechanism wherein, like, you convert this kinetic energy to put it back to recharge your battery, so that that energy is not going to get wasted. So you use that kinetic energy to get it converted into your battery energy, and yeah, again you reuse that energy back to propel your two-wheeler or a four-wheeler. So what happens by doing this is the amount of energy loss that happens when your vehicle is being driven is really, compared to an ICE engine, is very less. So but there again, it's very tricky, like there are everybody will say, like how does it help if I'm driving on a straight flat road? So mainly this is very useful when you have a stop and go kind of a driving conditions, especially in cities in Delhi, Bangalore, where the traffic is choked. So like you drive, you brake, you drive, you brake. So there, like what happens is, like you're not losing out on that energy. You're going to use that kinetic energy to convert it back into your source of power. So but again, like when we design these things, right, so we need to consider two parameters, which are basically, one is the efficiency and another is the effectiveness, like how exactly we will be doing regenerative on a vehicle. So in efficiency, like I think everybody would have read it, like 100% efficiency is just not possible. uh, Without breaking the laws of physics, I don't think we can achieve 100% of efficiency in any motor or any design or any aspect of things that we do. It's very difficult. So only thing is, like we can achieve it to some extent. So what happens in the EV, with all this battery, controller, motors, all those things, right? We can achieve an efficiency of 60 to 70%, when still your 30% is going to get lost as a heat dissipated, or yeah, many other forms it might get lost. But still, like compared to the IC engine, we can still have capture that 60 to 70% and make it more efficient, so the vehicle becomes more efficient compared to an IC engine. So there was a study done on all the EV vehicles, and they figured out that when somebody says there is a 70% of efficiency is being captured, that doesn't mean, like 70% of the energy comes back. For example, if I'm driving 100 miles is my range, and if I say, like regenerative is 70% capacitative, that doesn't mean, like I'll be able to drive 170 miles with full charge and regenerative happening. So it's basically, like at least between 20 to 30% is what is going to get charged back to your the batteries. That means you can extend your range by another 20 to 30 miles in a range of 100 miles, wherein, like you have the regenerative being happening at 70%. Like you stop and go and you have or you're on a uphill climb, and now you're coming down the hill. So what happens is you're applying your brakes continuously, so that generates the kinetic energy, which gets converted. So that efficiency has been calculated, like if you have a very good design of the controller, and your battery pack, and how the motor regenerative is being pushed back. So 30% is what people have claimed in Tesla S model, which comes to around if the range is around 100 kilometers, then you can drive up to 130 kilometers in one charge. So that is how it is done. And effectiveness is something interesting. So effectiveness is again like very difficult. Like the way I drive, the way somebody else drives is going to be really difficult to measure. So all that we can do is like we can always say like the efficiency is around 10, 20, or 30% is what the max can be achieved, because each driver's way they drive is going to differ, and all those parameters really are going to help in deriving that one. So if I'm driving and I get a 132 miles range of climbed 100-mile range, that doesn't mean somebody else also will get the same range. It all depends on the effectiveness in which they are driving it, how many times they are applying the brakes, whether they're hard or they are soft, or they are accelerating too much or they are not accelerating too much. So all those factors are to be considered. So it's you can draw a line telling that okay, 20% is what can be achieved in a normal riding condition. So which says that if it is a 100-mile range, then you can achieve 120 miles with regenerative braking system. So that's how the regenerative works, and that is a very tricky part to be designed and tested and done. But mostly I think nowadays you have a lot of methods, tools available, which wherein like you can test out this and see like what is the efficiency. Effectiveness is again like very difficult. It is only theoretical, because like it depends on the rider, the weather condition, whether it's in a hot region or in cold region. Based on that your battery chemistry also comes into picture, like how they react for the weather conditions. So efficiency is something which can be calculated, designed, and incorporated to a greater extent in the regenerative braking system. So this is just a example which I'm showing in the picture. You can see like the red in the two-wheeler is basically your output when you apply your brakes. The green is like that kinetic energy is going back to the battery, and when you accelerate, the red is something like that energy is being again drawn back to the hub motor, so that it gets converted into the wheel, and you can drive further down the lane. So similarly in the cars, you can see like the all the four wheels will be having the regenerative. So when you apply brakes, like they start powering back the battery packs that is there in the car, so that you don't lose out on that energy. So interesting thing is when this action happens, right? For example, when I'm braking, your acceleration is disengaged, so that if you cannot brake and accelerate together. So for example, in a two-wheeler, if I'm holding the brakes in a downhill, I cannot accelerate simultaneously, because that will be disengaged. The design is such that like because you cannot draw as well as charge the battery simultaneously.
At the
That doesn't
same.
work that way. So
This region will work best in India because we do apply so many brakes on Indian roads.
yes,
Is it
so
so?
it is a little trickier thing with the Indian consumer market, what we have seen. So because here we are used to, especially in the two-wheeler segment, we have seen like people are used to holding the brake and riding their Honda Activas or any non-geared vehicle. So in EV, what happens is as soon as you apply the brake, your acceleration is disengaged. So it needs a little bit of a time to get adjusted for the driving conditions. But definitely with the traffic and other things, we have seen like regenerative works well, especially in a stop and go traffic environment. And in the four-wheeler, if you see like many of the hybrid cars which are coming out, Toyota or Maruti and all, they have done that. If you're less than 40 kilometers of speed, they use the battery power to drive your vehicle with the PSSM motor available, and when you apply the brake, that is going to charge back your batteries, and they get a better range, and overall your fuel efficiency of the vehicle is good. So that's how it works, Naman.
Okay.
So now let's move on to the battery technology. I'll not spend more time here, because I think this was already covered in one of the webinars earlier, and I'll just touch base on like what are the types of batteries and what is the role of BMS here. So as everybody knows, like we have lithium ion, lithium polymer, lead acid, nickel, metal hydride. and many other varieties of battery packs are available. For example, ultra capacitors is there, all those things are there. But when you consider the industry and the number of people consuming, you can see that lithium ion is one of the highest in the EVs. Next comes your lithium polymer. And in India, like, all the three-wheeler segments, especially the rickshaws and other things, are still on the lead acid batteries, very, like, because it's much cheaper compared to lithium ion, and it's affordable for them. So these are the main three types which are currently, available in the market, and which people are using it, wherein like lithium ion stands number one. Nickel metal hydride, frankly speaking, it's very rare you find these available, or people using this one in the EVs. Most of them are moving to lithium ion or lithium polymer. Lithium polymer is more safer compared to lithium ion. So now again, the safety part falls into your battery management system. So let me move to the battery management system and just highlight what it is. So this is like your, it's like the heart of a human body. Battery management system is like, it controls everything: the charge, discharge, state of charge, your temperature management system. So all those things are, controlled from your BMS. So even when you're accelerating, for example, like, if your top speed is like, 70 kilometers per hour, and once you reach your 70 kilometers per hour, the BMS is the one which will, ensure that you're not drawing energy which is getting wasted. So all those things can be put into your BMS design when you do the design of BMS, and there are a lot of factors which can be incorporated into this. But I would highlight that you take the safety as one of the top priority when you design your BMS, especially for voltage cutoff and charge and discharge, and something like, you have a battery pack, like, you have like huge cell banks available there. So how do you manage them, and how do you ensure that there is no accident which occurs out of it? So all those things are to be designed when you do your BMS design. So that's one thing which we need to ensure that to be there. The next thing is, again, like, you have done your motor, you have done your controller. So now this BMS should work in synchronous with your controller, so that your output, your range, everything is reaching the values that you already put on the paper when you started your design. For example, if I say I have to get, if my payload is 150 kgs, and if I'm driving it in a normal driving conditions, I should be able to reach a range of 100 kilometers. So then your BMS should ensure that that is being achieved overall, at least 80% of the times. So the state of charge, again, like, we should not disconnect just like that when we run out of battery. Currently we have this problem in our two-wheeler which we are trying to solve it. It should either let the user know, which we are trying to use the software and other technologies to help them to understand that they need to recharge or swap it or put it for a charge, or whatever they need to do. We need to alert the user about that. We should not never like just shut it down when when the state of charge is like below the required voltage output. So that's on the BMS front, and also the charging standards are all already predefined. So if you're going to use a charging sockets, you just have to follow the standards and ensure that you fall into one of those categories. Like worldwide, you have CCS, CHAdeMO, and GBT. CHAdeMO is, I think, extensively used in India right now, but again, it's not standard. Like some of them use CCS, some of them use CHAdeMO, but when you design, like you have to take care of all these things, how you work functionally in the public charging infrastructure, like when you connect your systems, how exactly you need to charge, and DC-DC charging, how it works. All those things are controlled from the BMS. So we will next move on to the V2G and V2V. So this is something which people are talking globally. V2G is basically your vehicle to grid technology. So what exactly happens here is, like, for example, when my car is plugged into the V2G unit, and if my charge is around 100%, and I know like tomorrow I'm not going to drive, I can always give this power back to the home or back to the grid. So how it works is, like, since energy stored, right? It's like, it needs to keep moving. It shouldn't be at one place. You're like, wasting that energy. So in V2G technology, what happens is like, this extra energy that you have can be passed on back to the grid. So just to put it in a shorter sense, right? What happens is like, for example, if your home can be lighted with this energy, right? So what happens is you don't have to draw the power from the grid. So you're basically saving the energy that is generated from the grid to be used for something else. So that way, what happens is like, you're mitigating the climate change and other things which we are talking globally. So this is a very interesting topic which everybody is trying to see how it can be done across the globe. And I think in the Europe and the UK region, many of them have already done that. Even in the US, they have done that, very like, you can give it back to the grid if you have additional energy stored on your vehicles. So that's a very interesting thing. So that you can you don't keep that energy lying around in your vehicle. So you just keep moving it wherever there is a requirement for the energy. So that's the basic idea of V2G. Now, coming to V2V is we have two things in V2V. One is vehicle to vehicle charge and vehicle to vehicle communication. So vehicle to vehicle charge is again the same thing. Like, I'm driving my vehicle and somebody else on the same kind of vehicle or same kind of charge or same kind of technology is having 20% and I have 80% or 60%, wherein I can still give that 30% to him to reach his destination. So this technology helps vehicle to vehicle moving of the charge. For example, like from my car to another car, I can use a DC-DC converter to move the charge 20% or 30% to another vehicle, so that he can use that charge to drive his car. So that's very interesting thing. This makes a lot of sense when when you're at a workplace or at campuses or residential premises or even on the highways, where like somebody is running out of charge and the next charging station is just like a few miles away. You can use V2V technology to enable those vehicles to reach to the next charging station. So these are all the technologies which one of the biggest challenge that we are trying to solve, which is the range anxiety for the consumer market or anybody who drives an EV. They always have a range anxiety telling that, oh, when will I run out of charge? What will happen when I run out of charge? So all these things are going to help them to overcome that. So in this also what happens is in V2V, if I'm running low on a charge, I'll exactly know like if somebody is available with a V2V port who can help me to reach the next charging station. So it gives me a kind of confidence that okay, I'm not going to run out of charge. I have a vehicle which can donate for me for the charge to reach the next charging station. And coming to the communication, this is very interesting. So what happens here in V2V communication is each and every vehicle in the EV, if you see, are IoT enabled, connected, and they are communicating. They're sending a lot of information, state of charge, vehicle speed at what you're driving, and how many times you have braked, what was the regenerative braking that has been happening on this vehicle. So all those communications are coming back, and you have so much of information coming under your GPS position. Everything is coming back to you. So how do you use this to communicate within the vehicles? So V2V in the communication segment is something which is being used to avoid the accidents, to alert the drivers, telling that what next is going to happen, to ensure that everybody is safe when they are driving in these EVs. So V2V communication is something that it's a ad hoc network right now, and people are trying to use that. Where like they communicate within themselves and they exchange the data and they know like what's happening. And it'll help you. For example, if there is a traffic jam and you're going at high speed, it can always communicate back to you telling that anyway there's a traffic jam, you don't have to go at that speed, you can slow down. Or you can it can alert you telling that if you're low on your battery, or the next charging station at a very far off place, it can tell you when is the next V2V vehicle available for you in your nearby vicinity. So all those communications can happen in the V2V communication mode. So this is a very interesting thing which is slowly coming up. And this is the future of your autonomous driving and other things, like very like when everything becomes autonomous, like V2V with
Mm.
communication will be the biggest challenge, and the vehicles will communicate and they know like what decisions needs to be made when the vehicles are moving around on the road to keep everyone safe. So that's the idea of V2V communication.
Certainly, this particular sector is very interesting for our EV enthusiasts, and this is the future where they can invest time to learn these things and for V2V charging or communication for the
Yeah,
EV
so
users.
if you see this picture, you can see in the V2V charge, like somebody has put it for a charge, and he cannot move it out. So can I have a V2V where like I go and I just charge for like 5-10 minutes and keep going instead of waiting for that guy to finish his charge? So that's in the V2V part. And in the V2V communication, you can see like so many vehicles are communicating and sending data, sending information and exchanging the information. So when we do our design, it's just not enabling the vehicle to go from point A to point B. We need to consider all these things in our design, so that tomorrow when the vehicles evolve and when V2V becomes the norm, how does my vehicle design adapt for that change in the technology, whether it is capable, can we enable it now only. So all these things are like connected dots which will ensure you that okay, everybody say okay, EVs is nothing, just a battery and a motor, and you just drive it, nothing much. But what is bringing in the complexity is all these things around it, which is making it more complex and more communicative and more responsive, more information available. So that's how it is. So next, I'll be moving on to the Internet of Things. Naman, is there any question I need to take, or I can
We
continue?
can take questions in the end, like
Okay, fine, fine.
let's
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, let's
So
begin.
Internet of Things is again a very, very interesting topic in the EV segment or anywhere. You take any domain, like Internet of Things is the way forward, which is having a lot of dominance in the world. So specific to in the EV segment, like as I said, there is a lot of data that is being communicated. For example, if a vehicle has a controller which talks to the BMS, and if I need to know that information, your IoT is the one which is going to send it to me, telling that, okay, the state of charge of your vehicle is this, your vehicle GPS position is this was the last path that you took to reach from point A to point B. And speed monitoring in businesses, where like they put a speed monitoring telling that, hey, all my vehicles should be driven not beyond 50 kilometers per hour. And fall alert, if somebody gets into an accident, it can send an alert to the nearby people or to the offices or for the businesses, telling that there has been an accident and this is exactly the GPS location where this has happened. So a lot of things can be built into the vehicles, and IoT plays a very important role in communicating all those information back to the internet world. So this becomes like a gateway, a machine to machine gateway, wherein like all this information is sent back to the internet world. For example, where the vehicle is currently located, what speed it is being driven, did anybody steal my vehicle, what are the analytics of the vehicle, when was the last service for this vehicle done, how long has this battery been used, how many charge and discharges happened for this battery pack, do we need to change the battery packs after 2 years, how good is the quality of the battery in this vehicle, is a geofencing done for this vehicle, and is the vehicle going out of the geofence, is there a wheel jammer put into this vehicle, so that when somebody tries to move it, I send an alert, or I start making noise. And whether the regen is working properly, how much of the regen has actually been done. So now in the regenerative, we talk like 10%, 20%, 30%. And effectiveness, we know that it depends on each and every person riding. So IoT is going to help you to derive the data, wherein all this data is captured from these IoT devices and sent back to your internet, wherein like you can tell for Vivek, when he drives his car from home to office, his regenerative is at 25%. For Naman, when he is visiting his customers every day, his regenerative is at 10%. So all this data is collected on the vehicles, but IoT is what is sending the data back to your internet world, wherein like it comes as a dashboard, it comes onto your cloud, and you start analyzing the data. You build analytics on top of it, and charge compliance. So when I go to a charging station, or before I go to a charging station, IoT is the one which is going to help me to identify if I am on a CSS charger type, which is the nearest CSS charger type available. So in V2V communication, the charging stations are communicating, telling that, hey, I am a CSS type of charging stations. So now my IoT is going to send this data and use that information, and we say that, okay, this is the nearest station, charging station for you. And similarly with V2G, how much of the power have you given back to the grid? So, on a given, over the weekends, I'm giving 50% of the charge back to the grid. So now that needs to be converted into metrics. So IoT data is going to help you in doing that metrics to be converted, so the governments can see, okay, these vehicles are bringing back the energy to the grid, so we need to reimburse them by paying money, or like they reduce your electricity bills or whatever. So IoT is like it's a vast thing. So now let me come to a specific thing that we are doing with one of the company in UK, wherein like wherever the EVs are driven, we are trying to get the air quality index data driven. So what happens is, when you're driving these EVs, I collect all the air quality index, and this comes back to the cloud. So on the Google Maps, what I need to do is I write some APIs and I map this data and show, hey, look, in Delhi, the air quality index after the COVID-19 has improved a lot. And this is the air quality index that is currently available. And slowly, when the vehicles start moving, we start collecting this data wherever these vehicles are driven, and you populate that on the maps, showing it to people, telling that, hey, the air quality index is good, bad, ugly, needs to be looked at, or it is green. So all those things can be done. So to do any of these things, right, your IoT plays a key role, because IoT is the gateway to bring all this information out to the internet world and show it to your public, or show it to the consumer, show it on your mobile app. All these things can be done using your IoT. And integration of mobile app, web application, dashboard, all those things are done using the IoT. So now what happens when you start collecting all this data? You will start, your machine learning and AI enabled, all these things can happen only when you have the data sets available. So IoT is going to help you to get these data sets available. For example, if there is a charging station near the metro, I can draw, using these data sets, I can say how much of this is being utilized currently, whether people are using this charging station or it is going waste. So all those things can be derived using your IoT applications. And this is vast, like what you do, what you don't do, all those things is up to you. But basic things we need to consider will be the GPS tracking, speed monitoring, and we have a fall alert being put into our IoT solution, wherein like if somebody is driving the two-wheeler, if we met with an accident, it will send an alert immediately, telling that hey, this vehicle has met with an accident, this is the exact location where he has met with an accident. And also, like if you have left your vehicle and somebody tries to steal it or move it around, it sends an alert to you, telling that, hey, look, this vehicle that you had has been moved, or if somebody is trying to tamper with it. So all those things can be achieved in IoT. And in EV, like the scope is very high, especially when the communication between the controller, your BMS, all these things happen. IoT becomes the gateway to bring this information out to your internet world, which doesn't happen in your IC engines as of today. So this is just a graphical representation which I'm showing it to you. So for example, swap stations will have an IoT which will communicate back to you, telling that which is the nearest swap station. And battery packs will communicate, telling you the state of charge. Controller will tell you, like what speed the vehicle was driven, or even if there is a, because your everything is electronically driven, right, through the controller. So even if your indicators are not working, that can be that signal can be sent back through the IoT to your mobile app or to your web application, telling that this vehicle's indicators are become faulty. And motor, again, like how much the wear and tear has happened, how much it has driven, like is there any issue with the motor, whether the required torque output is coming out or not through the controller. All those information can be pushed back using your IoT solutions. And off-grid charging solar is something which we are trying out with Celco in India. So even there, like we'll be using an IoT solution for doing this one. So very like you use wind power for doing the grid charging, and that will communicate back to your you telling that okay, the swap stations, how much of charge was done using the wind power or the solar power. The reason why I had to highlight this is like if somebody is going to do research in the energy sector, you will know like 70% or 60% of the energy is coming from coal, which is like not a good thing, right, for the EVs. So we say like we don't want to burn fuel, but we are burning it somewhere else in this in the country, which doesn't make sense. So we build these kind of solutions so you can see the way I am moving around, how much of it is energy efficient and how much of it is really a green way of communication, how much of it I'm drawing from the grid or putting back to the grid, or whether I'm using solar or wind power to charge my battery packs. So all these things plays a critical role in building all those data sets at a higher level. So even in our case, like AI and ML is like we're collecting the data sets right now for especially the air quality index, which is a work in progress. I would say like we have the dashboard and we have the over there updates to enable disable the features, and the mobile app has been done, and the cloud connectivity is already done, so that we get all this information back to the cloud. And GPS is one of the basic things in an EV or a vehicle, I would say, like so that you can track your vehicle, where it is moving, who is driving it, or when was it last driven, how many trips you took in the last 1 month, how much you have driven in the last 1 year, whether it needs a servicing or any faulty things are there. All those things can be derived out of using IoT. So these are, I just want to show you guys like how our e-bike looks. So the frame looks like this, but the battery pack, the controller, the DC converters, everything is done in house in Bangalore. And we are currently in the beta phase, wherein like we are trying out with beta customers for last mile, first mile, and short mile commute, basically for short distance commute. So can we like move to the next topic
Yes,
on
yes,
mobility?
Vivek.
So
It is very insightful till now, and it's getting insightful in every slide.
okay.
Definitely, we should go ahead. Um,
Micro mobility. So what exactly is it micro mobility? Because like 10 years back, this word didn't even exist, right? I used to say like I travel from from home to office, or I travel from Bangalore to Chennai, or I'll travel, but
uh, I think we lose Vivek. Uh, let's see, he might connect back.
transport. So when it comes to mobility, right, it is basically the ability to move people safely and affordably between
Excuse
where
me,
they live.
Vivek. You need to restart the screen sharing once again,
Oh, you lost
because
it.
your connection is lost.
Just a minute. What happened?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Share.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Did we lose my voice also as well? How it was just
Yes. We
okay.
lost you.
So what I was trying to tell everybody is everybody talks about this mobility, which didn't even exist 10 years back, because in those days it was just transportation, right? Like
Mm.
transportation is basically moving people, animals, goods, etc., from point A to point B. It can be either air, rail, road, or even off-road. So as we move to urbanization and other things, like mobility came into picture, and especially EV. Everybody talks of e-mobility, micro-mobility, and everything. So I just wanted to put it in layman terms what exactly mobility means. So mobility is basically the ability to move people safely and affordably between where they live, work, spend their leisure time. So it is like, for me, mobility is like, moving from home to office and office to home, and going to my gym or going to my grocery store nearby. And also, like, in the leisure time, I go and meet my friends in a coffee shop nearby and things like that. So that's the mobility thing that we call. And this cannot be told like, I have a mobility solution for moving people from Bangalore to Delhi or Bangalore to Chennai. That doesn't hold good. It's basically like, for example, it's affordability and this and safely you move them in the small vicinities of the urbanization. So that's exactly is mobility. So here, like, you have two-wheelers, basically your cycles, not EV, just the cycle. So you move around in your cycle. So that is again a mobility, which is a micro mobility. Like I just cycle around my house, or I go to the nearest park for running or whatever reasons. So that is also categorized as mobility. So now what we did in micro mobilities, like we made them as battery assisted, so that people can go a little longer, so that they don't have, if they are living in a hilly region, for example, it's very tiresome to ride a cycle in a hilly region, and if you're especially going to the work, you cannot go fully sweat and be uncomfortable. So the bicycles were made as battery assisted. So now when in mobility, what happens is, like, when you say battery assisted, it should also be connected, where like you can track how much you drove, and lock your vehicle electronically. The bicycle can be locked using a mobile app and things like that. And the next category is again the kick scooter, which is again a battery assisted, which we have one of the model for which we have a patent, that helps you to move around within the campuses, within hospital premises for the doctors or nurses, within airport lounges, within the airport areas, or like in the railway station platforms and other places where, like, you want to commute for a short distance, not beyond 1 or 2 miles. So this category holds good. Next is the seated scooter, which we have, which can be used for your last mile, first mile, short mile, mode of moving around within the city. So that's where the mobility is, and that's where, like, micro mobility comes into picture. So there are a lot of other things as well involved. One is like shared mobility, and community based mobility, and again personal mobility. So by my way is basically into the personal mobility segment, wherein, like, when I say like personal mobility, it's like your phone. A phone is like personal for everybody, right? You don't share it with somebody. I mean, two people don't use a single phone number, right? I mean, each
Yes.
one has his own identical phone number, and he uses his phone. And here and there, what happens is, like, we give that phone to make a call to a friend, or check something on the web for a friend when he has run out of charge, and things like that. So personal mobility is basically for me to move around. We do the deployment. So now this can be used by family members, as well as I can drop a friend on a need basis. But basically, the targeted segment for us is for one person to move around wherever he wants to move freely without spoiling the environment. So that's basically what we are trying to do. And in the kick scooter, we have tied up with another company to do the shared mobility, wherein within the office campus, people want to move around, and today's office campuses are very large, and not transport or public transport. So for if it is a 20-acre campus, so here the public transports drop them at their entrance. So from there to his building or something, they can use this kick scooter micro mobility to move faster to their destination without having to worry about spoiling the environment. They're not using fuel based vehicles. So one thing which I can quote here is, like, Yulu bicycles is there in Bangalore and many other cities. So they are doing the same thing. So they are trying to solve that problem of the last mile connectivity, but they become a shared mobility services, not a personal mobility. And in the picture you can see, like, there are a lot of variations in that one. So if you see the three-wheeled seated one, which is covered, right? So that is something like, which is a covered one, and that can be used where, like, it's going to rain a lot in a given year because of the region specific. So there, you can deploy these kind of vehicles for people to move around. And there are many other mobility solutions currently available in India and globally. The only thing what we need to understand is, when we are building these solutions, right? So it basically starts from design, your controller, other features and other things, IoT, and then finally you come to mobility, where, like, you tell, like, hey, I have a vehicle which can cater for home people, or somebody within the campus, or somebody who's doing a logistics delivery, or somebody who is managing the food tech delivery. So we need to segmentize that and use this opportunity to go and deploy this. So it can be, you start your own, like, you become an entrepreneur in yourself, and you start this, and you keep all these things in your mind, and you start designing and building your business plan. If you're opting to work for an organization, then when you fall into any of these categories, so you think on these lines when you're going to be on the real job front. For example, if somebody starts working in the micro mobility, and they are in the operations, they need to consider, like, how many people are there, and what is the frequency of people moving around, and how many people need to be deployed to move these bikes around, and how do we manage the inventory, and all those things needs to be considered. If somebody is in the research and development, they need to think on the aspects when they're designing a controller. Okay, region is one thing I need to take care. I also need to communicate with, I also need to that's going to come and sit on top of me. All those things they need to consider and be prepared for. So I would say, like, it's even I've been through this journey wherein, like, we had a lot of issues. We have lost customers because of bad solutions being built on the things, but it was all a learning. So yeah, so if you see here in the micro mobility.
Vivek, just a second ago, your PPT is offline. You
Oh,
can
okay.
share. Just a second ago, not ready.
Is it I have a bad connection, or?
Yeah, little bit.
I'm sorry about that, guys.
Yes, we have yet another day. We have lagging so much.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So what I was telling is, if you're going to consider micro mobility as your path, then there are a lot of segments again here, like closed campus, short distance commute for consumer market, or logistics, and your food tech delivery, and many segments are there. So you decide which segment you go, and you start working on those segments. And when you come here, like, it is at the highest level. Mobility deployment is at the highest level,
Okay.
wherein, like, your vehicle is ready, controller is ready, and your IoT solution is ready, and your mobile app is ready. So when you do the deployment, you have to ensure that what category of segment you're addressing there, because I cannot give a skateboard in a community where, like, it's a retired people are living there. I mean, they're going to
Right.
fall and break their bones. So that's not going to work there. So probably I will think of this three-wheeler wherein they can sit and ride around. So that makes sense. Now, if I'm going into a college campus, I would prefer a kick scooter because it's fun to ride and people will enjoy it. And in colleges, most of them have a backpack, so it's easier for them to ride and leave the vehicle there and go. And if you're talking about home for professionals, then a seated bike which we have like these makes a lot of sense for them to travel around. They'll have a lunchbox which can be placed in front of them. And in our mobility thing, we have a swap battery a solution built in, so that you don't have to charge along with the vehicle. So you can just remove the swap battery, take it home or office to your desk, and charge it at your location, or you're going to your coffee shop, you can charge it there and use it. And all these are IoT enabled, so that you can have all the analytics, everything coming to your off your bike, being available to you at your fingertips.
So certainly we are going to see these vehicles on road more now
Yes, yes. So
nowadays.
right
Yes.
now, personal mobility is something people want to prefer because of the COVID-19 thing happening, and everybody. I mean, we have got a lot of queries, requests, and starting from 18th onwards, we'll be very busy
Okay.
in catering to all of them.
I hope we are at the end of the PPT and
Almost.
if some
So now
questions.
I'll just talk on the upskills
Okay.
for
Okay.
biomedical
Okay.
discipline, which is a very important topic for the student community. So as everybody knows that we started with motor, controller, battery pack, BMS, frame design, and power electronics, which is for your DC-DC converter and other things. And on top of all this layer, we have IoT or application solution. So now, for example, I'll just take, I'm from a mechanical background. So how does the EV industry work for me, or how do I
Yes.
where do I fit in? So you can see in the motor design and in the native frame design, right? Mechanical and industrial production are the guys who are going to work a lot there, because they come from that background. They understand a lot of detailing from a technical perspective in those disciplines. So they fit in there. So now, if a mechanical guy thinks, okay, I'm good at native frame design, but I also want to contribute to the IoT. So you just need to upskill with your computer and IoT skills while you are doing your course. In fact, you can request your colleges to have a curriculum curated. For example, for Bangalore College, we have calculated a EV for mechanical and other other disciplines to help them to be ready. So similarly, if you take an electronics guy, he's good in power electronics. He can do the power electronics design, and he can do the controller design, and he can also do the BMS design. And if he does a little bit of upskill in IoT, then he's going to touch base most of it except the motor and frame. Now, an electrical guy thinks like EV and electrical guys are very close. So they can touch base on motor, they can touch base on controller, they can touch base on battery pack BMS, they can touch base on power electronics, and with a little bit of IoT knowledge being added to their curriculum or as an additional course, they can also be IoT ready, so that they understand the whole ecosystem. And when I say electrical, it's also electrical, electronics, and communication. They can play the role everywhere. The only thing where they might not fit in is the native frame design that is done by a mechanical engineer or a IP engineer, or wherein they do the design of the vehicle. Especially in four wheelers, you have to consider aerodynamics and other things which they would have already studied as part of their curriculum, which you guys would have not done it. So overall, you can see, and coming to the computer science or information science, these guys are on the top layer. Web application, IoT application, and mobile app, everything they will be doing at the top layer. If they want to get down a little bit, then they can go to the BMS as well as the controller design, because there is also a lot of software applications written inside this. For example, in your BMS also you write your applications, and in the controller also write your applications, which talks and communicates back to your IoT. So if these guys can upskill with a little bit of knowledge on the controller and battery pack, then when they write their IoT solutions, they exactly know how to communicate with these things. They will definitely not fit in the motor or native frame design. Power electronics might be a little difficult or out of scope for them, because it's purely on electronics, like the IC. When you do a DC-DC converter, you have to talk about how much is the watt output, what is the input voltage, what is the output voltage, and things like that, which becomes a little complex for a computer science or an information science engineering discipline. So that's at a very high level. I've covered the basic engineering disciplines. Instrumentation also fits in wherever electrical and electronics go in, and with a little bit of computer upskill, they can also fit in with CS. Definitely, they'll not go with mechanical and or industrial production. So these I think these are the main disciplines which can get ready for the EV industry. And I would say, once you once you have upskilled with a little bit of the courses or other openly available courses, I think you will be ready for the EV industry. It's just like any other industry, and it's very exciting, and there's a lot of new things to be done, like V2V, V2G, and all.
Certainly, this picture directly depicts how one student should involve in particular skill set and which course. And this will be really helpful for our audience and the students also to get direct depiction of the skill set they can get.
That's
Particular.
that's
Yeah.
that's correct. That's correct. That's correct. So I think okay. Now coming, I think in the initial we had like if
Yes.
we are doing the manufacturing here, so you can see the hardware and IoT boards. Basically, the IC boards and all is done in Bangalore. We are working with Releases India Private Limited to get that done. That is they are a M2M solution providers based out of Bangalore. It's another startup based out of Bangalore. And for all our design and other things, we are working with Empoise Design Studio, which is again based out of Bangalore. And since we are into personal mobility, right? So micro mobility is not our cup of tea. So we have tied up with LIEV Private Limited, which does the micro mobility deployment in campuses or apartment complex and things like that. So and even the large industrial plants, they are trying to push the micro mobility to be deployed, the kick scooter basically. And all the software part is being done by MyV technology. We do it ourselves. We have not bought any solution from outside. We have not paid and bought any solution outside. Everything is in-house done. So we know exactly when there is an issue, like what exactly is the issue, and we can debug and fix that. And for the motors, we are working with Physics Motors, which is another startup based out of Bangalore, for the the hub motor design and other things. And also the controller is being done from another startup which is based out of Bangalore. Where I forgot to add them up. We have just started our conversation with them. Where we want to make it more robust and CAN enabled, so that we can have more information coming out from the controller back to the internet world, so that we can analyze the vehicle analytics very well. So I think that brings to Q&A now.
Okay. So I'll start asking questions. Some of there. This is from Anurang. So he's asking, in case of ICE engine vehicles, there's a facility of OBD2 port to get vehicles data like speed, engine status, and other diagnostic information. Is similar functionality provided into two, three, or four-wheeler EV? Can we get live data of SOC in it? I think the answer
Yes,
is yes.
yes, the answer is yes. So in the controller, like I was just telling, we are working with one company for making it CAN enabled. So once it is CAN enabled, you can read the complete analytics, including the tire pressure that is there in your vehicle, up to the how many times you throttled. Because in EV, all your throttles are electronic, not wire driven. So they are all electronic throttle, and the brake being applied because you have regen. So all this data will be coming back to you, and you can have this information collected, and through the IoT you can bring it back to your dashboard and derive whatever data you want to derive out of it.
Okay. Okay. So there's next question from Ashish. He is asking, you said the better controller design, how can region affect the BMS? If the controller design is better, then how region can affect the BMS? Is it affecting the BMS or not?
Okay, BMS needs to communicate with your controller. For example, when I apply my brakes, the controller needs to send a signal to the BMS telling that, hey, the brakes are being applied. Now you should not discharge your power. You should, in fact, whatever the kinetic energy I'm sending back to you, right? You should take that as an input charge, and you should not discharge it. So what happens is it should disengage your acceleration. So, for example, if you take any, let's take a mobile as an example. So, when you are charging it, right, when you're charging your mobile, you cannot discharge it simultaneously, right? There is no mechanism
Yes.
to discharge it simultaneously. So, you can either charge it or you can discharge it. So, the similar thing, the BMS should take care, wherein, when the brakes are applied, the controller should communicate to the BMS telling that the brake is applied, so now you don't discharge. You need to charge with whatever the kinetic energy that I'm going to send back to you. That is generated from the braking system.
Okay. Okay. Akib is asking what kind of BMS is better, analog control or MCU control?
Okay, it again depends on the application. For example, a low speed two wheeler can have an analog controller, because it doesn't go at high speed, and I know like the range is limited. But if you take of a four wheeler, for example a car, or Nixon, Tata Nixon, right? So there they give a range of like 400 kilometers for you in one charge. So there the analog data might not give you the exact results. You might lose out with that analog data. So there it doesn't make sense to use have your design with an analog controller.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's all based on the application where you're doing. So that's why if you go back to the presentation, the first slide where I said first thing you
Mhm.
need to consider is like whether you're doing a two wheeler, three wheeler, four wheeler. Okay. So they like the presentation when I built it, like I built it like that, so that as you take the next step, you need to think, okay, now this is becoming complex, so I should not use this. I should use better BMS. I should the motor and the controller should work in synchronous. Then you bring in your BMS, and then you bring in your IoT. So that's how it works. It's like building blocks.
Okay. Okay. So I'll take quickly two, three questions more. And what are all parameters will be affecting mileage of an EV? What will be the average life on of an EV?
Okay, so the parameters vary a lot. For example, when I ride an EV, I might get a range of, just as an example I'm taking, I might get a range of 100 kilometers, because I exactly know when I'm in a downstream, I should not throttle, because that's going to get wasted. I should be using the regen braking system. But if somebody else drives very like even in the downstream, they're not they're accelerating and wasting the energy, then what happens is they might get a range of around 70 to 80. And now my body weight is like let us say 75 kgs, whereas somebody else is driving who's at 85 kgs. So now the payload also varies,
Okay.
and a lot of factors will vary, and even the road conditions in which we are driving, and even your terrain in which we are driving, and the weather conditions in which we are driving. So all those factors come into picture. So when we
Same as
design,
the IC engine car, like the factors which are we face in the IC engine car
so
for the
IC
mileage.
engines, yeah, IC engines, what has happened is they have evolved over a period of time. So if you go back like 50 years back when Ford was built, those were not very efficient IC engines. But today's ones are like more efficient, because they've improvised on all other factors over a period of time. So it's like we cannot compare apples with oranges. But when we design the EV, that's why I said like you should have a native platform. So do you start from ground zero and you start it? You don't take IC engine as an example and you start building on top of it.
Understood. The next question is from Chetan. How much will solar charging will contribute in boosting up the mileage of an
Okay, so this is actually if you go back to the slides wherein I showed huge panels of solar being used to charge the battery swap station. So if you understood how the solar energy works, right? It peaks between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. So that's when the peak happens. After that, you don't get that much of a peak output from your solar panels as you get between that time. So it's very difficult to convert that into a energy. For example, like let us think of having a solar panel on my car roof. Will it help me so that I don't have to charge my vehicle at all? No, it will not practically work, because the amount of range that you need, the amount of energy and torque and other things,
EV?
speed that you need, they don't fall in sync with your solar charge. Because
Okay.
solar is like as I said, like it peaks between 8 and 11, and after that it's like variation. There is a lot of variation in that power that comes out of it. So you cannot depend on that for driving your vehicle, because your driving is dynamic, right? you're in a downstream, you're climbing a hill, or you're on a highway, you might be in a city traffic. So it's very dynamic. So you cannot design something thinking that, okay, I'll put a solar panel and it's going to work. But let me give you some input. There's a company in France or Italy who are trying to do this one, but we have studied their papers and other things. So what they say is, like, it is not fully effective, but it helps you, like how your regenerative is giving you back 20%,
Yes.
30%. So it'll add up another 5-10% for you, so that it comes close to 40 to 50%, which gives you the range anxiety is reduced for you, because okay, we have a solar panel and I have regenerative, so it might help me to go another further. If it is 100 miles, I should be able to achieve around 150 miles. So that's how it helps, but it cannot replace, as of today, with the technology we have, it cannot replace it directly on your vehicles.
Okay. There's another question is on V2V. Is in the idea phase or it is in a, implementation by any company?
Okay, so any charging mechanisms or anything, right? You can go to IEEE and search for papers. So there is a standardization which will be drawn out of this, so that everybody follows those standards. So those standards are already being drawn. There is a paper submitted on this, and I think in UK, some companies are trying it out on a trial basis to make it work. Very, like, V2V, vehicle to vehicle charging is effective and is can be used. But to put it in a layman's term, like, the standards have been defined. Only thing is now, like, the implementation is pending, because it's again, like, the manufacturers need to consider whether their vehicles will support it. So it's like, everybody needs to agree and fall into the picture wherein they say, okay, our V2V, this format we will follow, so that my vehicle can charge some other vehicle as well. Or even I think Tesla is planning to do that, very, like, V2V for Tesla's work, but they feel like they have so many charging points, superchargers deployed across their mainland US, so they don't need to have this V2V to be done.
Okay. Okay. Pratyush is asking what is the communication protocol being used in your vehicle?
So we are using OBD right now for communicating, but we want to move to CAN enabled. So because CAN enabled is gives us more flexibility, and more information can be gathered compared to OBD.
Okay. Okay. He is also asking that what is your thought on series hybrid drive system in e-bikes?
Okay, this is a very tough question, man. Thank you for asking that.
Okay.
See, in a two-wheeler platform, right? You're always in a constraint for space. For example, let us take an very commonly used Honda Activa. So now, if I want to make that as a hybrid, wherein, like, it works for EV as well. So where do I put my controller? Where do I put the battery pack? How do I make the charging socket for that? Do I need to make it a swap? So it becomes very cumbersome to design it, and as such, if you if since I have been in the industry and following it up, we know, like, IC engines are going to die in the next 5 to 10 years. It'll be, we will not be driving any more IC engines, especially two wheelers down the lane in next 5 to 10 years, or maybe 15 years. So do we really need to put our thoughts on the R&D and spend enough energy? I took a backseat. I said, like, I'll not do it. But Meladeth is a company which has done that. So you can go back and Google about it. Meladeth, which is a Indian company, Bangalore based. So what they have done is they have built a retro kit for an Honda Activa. So very, like, it works. It works as a hybrid. So when you're on low speeds, you can drive it as an EV, and or when you run out of charge, you can convert it into IC, and vice versa. When you run out of IC fuel, you can use it as an EV. So they have built that solution, and they have got it patented also. They have a patented technology for that. So it is doable. So it's basically, it goes back to your drawing room, when you
Hmm.
start thinking, like, whether you want to do that or what exactly you want to do that. In my drawing room, I didn't start with that, so I didn't take that up seriously. But that was a great question, man. Thank you.
Okay. Vivek, we have two people who wants to ask question in person with you, Mr. Raghavan and Mr. Satish. So I'll try to connect them with you here, and they will ask question or something with you.
Sure, sure.
Uh, yes, Mr. Raghavan is here.
Hi, Ravinder.
Hello, sir. Yeah, good afternoon.
Good evening. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yes, sir. Sorry.
Hope you enjoyed the session today.
Yes, it's actually very informative, and thanks for your valuable insights on this session.
My pleasure, man. Anytime.
Yes, sir. Just actually, it's a business-related question. If I can go ahead.
Sure, go ahead.
Yes,
Ye-
Raghavan, just keep it short. We are
Yeah,
already
yeah,
extended.
yeah. I'll just try to finish it. Actually, just want to know, like, have you raised any fund from the markets, like Fund A
Oh.
series? Yes.
Okay, right now, no, we are bootstrapped and we will be, working with Deshpande Foundation soon, who are
Okay.
interested and have shown interest in this.
Okay, and it is said like in a FAME 2, as per the government policy,
Mm-hmm.
if any of the EV companies, if it is more of a Indianized means if 70% of components are Indian based,
Localized, yes,
yeah, so
correct.
we get that benefit. So just want to know, like just now you said it's totally a Indianized. We use all the Indian components, whatever components we use. So are we getting that FAME 2 or FAME 3 benefit for our company?
Okay, so that is a very tricky question. So what I'll do is I'll say, so the FAME 2 is, applicable to the consumers, not for the companies.
Okay.
Okay. So in our case, we are not selling these bikes. We are doing a subscription plan wherein like the ownership of these bikes will still be with the company.
Okay.
Okay.
Wherein people will use it only for the subscribed time period.
Yes.
So the FAME 2 is not applicable in this case.
Do this.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you,
Yeah.
Raghavenji.
Thanks, sir. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'll connect Satish also for one more question. Yeah.
Sure.
Hello,
Yes,
sir.
Satish. Yeah.
Hi,
What are
Satish.
your
Good evening. How are you today?
Wait, Satish. Yes, Satish. Now go ahead.
what about a British scrap policies implemented in India, sir?
Okay.
Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear that properly.
Satish is asking about the scrap lithium-ion battery policy, sir.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
see, every company has to do some CSR, social responsibility, and we have tied up with eco recycling for disposing of our battery packs. So the plan is what we are thinking of is it's still at a very initial stage. So once see for a
Oh, sorry, sir. Vivek. Okay.
facility as the
Vivek is not there. Yes. Vivek, you are not audible. Okay, Satish, I'll try to connect him. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll try to connect Mr. Vivek once again if it is possible. Or I think we have given to the answers of uh, almost everybody, and we lost the connection with Mr. Vivek. Hope you guys all enjoyed this webinar, and we are trying to connect more EV enthusiasts, EV related industry people to you guys. Our web series is all about how you can skill upgrade to involve in this EV industry. So let's sum up this webinar here, and we'll come up on 15 for next webinar. Stay tuned. Thank you, Vivek. I'll connect you in person. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody, to join. Be there on 15 4:30. there will be much more on the vehicle design part and the 3D simulation of vehicle design on 15th. Thank you, and